Hi, today I am going to be sharing with you the new morning time resource for Easter that is available in our shop. I'm going to be taking you on a walk through what you can expect from it to help you know if this might be a good fit for your homeschool this Easter season. If you don't know me, I am Rachel from 7 in All. My family creates homeschool resources that we sell on our website as digital downloads, and our website is where'dyoulearnthat.com. I will put the shop down below. But today I'm going to be talking about our new Easter resource. We've had a Christmas unit available for the past 2 Christmases now. A lot of you have really enjoyed our Christmas unit and said it's been so easy for you to implement. For some people, they've mentioned that it's been the first Christmas unit that they've actually been able to complete because it is so easy. And we've been asked because of that to do an Easter resource to help families with the Easter season who want to be able to enjoy that and use the season to learn a little bit more. So this resource is not exactly like our Christmas resource, but we are definitely putting our own signature style on the resource, so I hope that you enjoy it. I'm going to be showing you what it's like in just a second. I do want to answer some questions that I've had. This resource is going to be for the older kids. I am recommending for ages 6 and up. It's an elementary through probably middle school resource, and when I show it to you, you're probably going to understand why. This is not a very little kids Easter resource. There are other Easter guides that I think are a very good fit for the younger child. I've never used Gentle and Classical's Easter unit, but I've heard really good things about that, and you could definitely check that one out. If you have little kids and are looking for a guide to help celebrating Easter with your little kids, this one's actually going to be more for your bigger kids. If you have a 6-year-old, you could probably use it with them, but probably not so much if your oldest is around 6. You know that the dynamic kind of changes if you have bigger kids, but then also kindergarteners versus if your oldest is in kindergarten and you have very little kids. So this is going to be more for the older kids, and you'll see why in just a minute. All right, so here is our guide. It's about a 60-page file, which includes the daily page guide for the parents, as well as the printable resources for activities that you will be doing with your kids. So, besides the guide, there is one required book. In this morning time guide, we're mainly getting into 4 topic areas. There's going to be scripture, then there's going to be history, handicraft, and hymn. So it's a hymn study. If you're familiar with our hymn studies, we're using basically the same format, so that will be familiar. We're including handicrafts, history, and scripture. For the history element, you will need this book. So this is a required text, and this is often available on thrift books if you'd like to look for a used copy. It's also available on Amazon. I'll link to this book down below. But this is Daily Life at the Time of Jesus. This morning time guide is much less focused on Easter traditions itself, as it is much more focused on Christ, on the life of Christ. My idea in writing this is that Easter is a celebration of the resurrection. The resurrection matters because Christ was crucified, and he was crucified and he died because he first lived. So we're beginning with a look at Christ's life and his ministry before we get into learning about his death and his resurrection and reflecting on the events of his life. So for history, we are incorporating this book to really learn about and dive into the context of Jesus' life. I'll give you a little bit of a look inside so that you can understand why I am recommending this as an older kids Easter unit. This is a really cool book that can give context about the history, what was going on in this part of Jesus' world. There are a lot of pictures, many of which are real pictures and artifacts, but there are also drawings and illustrations. This part of the book has a little bit less pictures that's giving background history. Most of that is not scheduled for this, but then in other parts. So we do not have this whole book scheduled. The morning time plan is only for 4 weeks. So we have readings from this scheduled that tie into the Bible stories that you are reading, but we do not schedule the whole book. However, my mom wanted to say that if you go ahead and buy this book and do this study, go ahead and take time later on or take time in the rest of your homeschool to read this book and get more out of it. Because if you're going to own a book like this, it's you want to get as much out of it as you can to really learn about. So we've got different topics like, what is the Sanhedrin? Because when we're reading these Bible stories to our kids, they don't necessarily know how to picture, okay, what's going on? What is the Sanhedrin? What are the Pharisees and the Sadducees? So we get a glimpse into what life was like. What do these different terms mean, these different places? What was crucifixion? So you get a glimpse at this, at what Jesus' life was like through this book, which has a lot of images, and typically, other than the history section, typically the readings on different topics are fairly short. It's a really interesting book. So that one is required if you want to fully do the history part of this. And I do highly recommend that. And I bought this book used, and I bought it for $8. So it's a very affordable edition if you can find a used copy, and even as a new copy, it is worth it. We do have a few pages of front matter. I didn't print all of them, but I did print the supply list here. And we have a list of links for helpful resources, for audio for the songs, as well as if you want sheet music for the songs, you can download those. So the 4 hymns that we go over during the course of this, we do 1 hymn each week. When I survey the wondrous cross, Christ the Lord is risen today, crown him with many crowns, as well as the modern hymn, How Deep the Father's Love for Us. I also have a supply list for the handicrafts and for the different options, because I usually give you options that you can adapt from for the handicrafts. Then this is what your weekly schedule will look like for morning time. So you have scripture, memory verse, history, hymn, and handicraft. The handicraft is scheduled for 1 day during the week. On the other days, you are reading the Bible, memorizing, practicing your memory verse with the card, reading from the history passage, and having something to do with your hymn. Then 1 day a week, you have the handicraft scheduled, and on that day, your history reading also pertains to the handicraft, and those history readings are written in the guide. So we have the Bible passages here, but we also have the titles if you would like to read from a children's Bible, if your children are a little bit younger. We also have the titles for what story or episode in Jesus' life that was. So we are reading major episodes of Jesus' life throughout the book of John during the early weeks. So the first 2 weeks we are focusing on Jesus' life. During week 3, which is intended to be completed during Holy Week, during the week that leads up to Easter, we're reading from the episodes of the week before the crucifixion and resurrection. So that week of the crucifixion and resurrection. As an option, so this is not necessary. You can just read from the Bible, but as an option, because I know some of you really do enjoy having beautiful devotional books, as an option, we do schedule the readings from Darkest Night and Brightest Day. This is the same book, I'm just turning it over. Darkest Night and Brightest Day by Marty Machowski. So that is an option that we do schedule for the readings for week 3 and week 4. Week 4 is intended to be completed after Easter. Now, I know that this is a little bit of an unusual choice to continue the schedule after Easter, but Easter does not end on Easter Day. Easter is it's the beginning of the celebration that Christ rose, and a lot happened after he rose. So the stories and the readings of the week after Easter are dealing with the events that happened once his resurrection was discovered and after the resurrection. So it is intended and ideally scheduled that you do 3 weeks up until Easter, and then you continue with 1 week after Easter. This is so that the experience of Easter for your kids is not that, okay, we have Easter Sunday, we have all these festivities, and then we don't mention anything else about it. So this is kind of continuing this contemplation of Easter in the days that follow Easter. So you can see our 4 handicrafts here. We have stained glass windows, and we talk about the history of stained glass in the church. We talk about the history, how Easter's date is decided, why it always happens in the spring. Then we have an Easter lily paper craft. So you'll be cutting out paper and you can form an Easter lily or a bouquet of them. Then we talk about what's going on with Easter eggs. Why do we see eggs everywhere? And you have some options for an Easter egg art handicraft. And the final handicraft talks about how all of these stories were written down, how all of these events of Christ's life and the events of the early church were written down over the years, the Bible manuscripts, and we go into medieval illuminated Bible manuscripts, then you have the option for your handicraft of doing a hand-lettered illuminated Bible verse. So that's kind of the overview. This is what a day looks like. So this is a day when you don't have a history reading. In the guide itself, your history reading is coming from daily life at the time of Jesus. So there's not much text in here on those days. You do have some text with discussion questions. You have some added discussion questions and explanations about the verb, bringing out some of the difficult words like strife. What does it mean that Jesus lives, that death may die? And then at the end, you have your do. So for this day, you're doing an illustration challenge. Oh, why am I on day 2? There it is, day 1. This is day 1. So we alternate between doing copy work for the hymns and doing illustration challenges for the hymns. I will show you what that looks like in just a minute. So here's where we're introducing the hymn, and we're also connecting it to the Bible verse. The imagery in Revelation 19, verse 12, that crown him with many crowns is based on. So you have your nice one-page daily guide. I recommend that you can print all of the daily pages double-sided if you'd like. You could also read them off of a digital format because there are occasionally links. Here we have the history of stained glass right here. So here you have an actual longer reading because we're going into the history itself of this handicraft. And then your do is also a little bit longer. So the handicraft days, you typically have a 2-day page spread because of that. But you go through continuing with the daily guides. I just printed out a few to show you so you can see the format. Then a few of the activities. So this is what a copy work page looks like. And then we don't always do copy work because I feel like that can get a little bit tedious. So we alternate with illustration challenges where the child's just encouraged to read these words, contemplate these words, and draw an illustration. How would they visually show the meaning of these words? So copy work, just doing a few examples of what you can expect. So we either do copy work or illustration challenges for each verse. Here's an example of, so you're challenged to make art with a Bible verse, make an illuminated Bible verse, hand-lettered Bible verse. Here's an illustration, which could also be used as a coloring page for younger kids who aren't at that point where they could write it out, draw it out themselves. We also include plain lyric sheets, but if you want sheet music, we included the links to those for the ones that have free sheet music in the public domain. And then these you can cut them out to use as cards, because I find it so much easier for us to actually memorize anything that is on a card. So we have these beautiful cards for each memory verse, which you'll notice they all come from John. I really did focus on the Gospel of John for this whole study. So you'll see that in the Bible readings and the passages that you're memorizing. So that is what you can expect. You will just need to get this from our website, very affordably priced, as all of ours are. I'll link to it down below. And then you'll want to get this book to go with it. And if you want to, you just want something extra, you want a pretty devotional, you can get The Brightest Day and Darkest Night. And you can read that instead of the scheduled Bible readings. But that's what you can expect. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below. I'll be seeing you next time. Bye.